Hello, everyone. A very good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening, depending on what time of the day you are viewing this video. I did this session earlier with some webinars that I had conducted as a host, but this I'm doing as a recording. The essentials of a career transition is because of the feedback that I got during the webinars. I was told that a lot of people couldn't attend because of the time constraints and also connectivity, it wanes, and so they missed out on certain aspects. So that's the reason why I thought I will do a recording. And this is a precursor to a lot of videos that I plan to do, short, small videos I plan to do on career transitioning through my channel called Leadership with Was. It's a YouTube channel with Leadership with Was. So with that as the preamble, let's get down to the presentation proper. And I've got a PowerPoint, so to help us stay focused on what we have to say. And let me share that right now. The essentials of career transition. So I'm from the former Chief of Operations, Head of HR. So I'm currently an ACC Associate Certified Coach from the International Coaching Federation, and I'm a leadership, life, and a career transition coach. This is my third career at 59. I'm also an international author. I published a book on how to sharpen your interview skills, visiting faculty to a lot of premier institutes. I have been doing webinars for career transitions for the DGR course in the IIMs of Indore, Lucknow, and Bangalore. And also I have done webinars on preparing the PGP students of these institutes, including IIT Jodhpur, in preparing for the career in the corporate. And I'm also an infopreneur. I am a founder of a company called CEO because this is something which I had a long ambition to be a boss of my own rights. And an infopreneur because I use a lot of social media to create the brand that I am today. So the best of both worlds. I've been in the Indian Artillery as I left as a lieutenant colonel, and I've been with the NSG 51 Special Action Group. And after a stint as a commando, I also did my staff tenures as a BM and DQ, it used to be called then. And currently it's called the AQMG and the GSO1. And in the corporate, I've been with 4 different industries as chief of operations and the head of HR. And I've been in Bangalore, Chennai, Pondicherry, and of course in God's own country. So currently I'm on my third career, and I decided to use the experience of both this to help in the transition of the officers as one of the aspects of my coaching and mentoring. This was because I felt this need when I was transiting in 2008. There was nobody to mentor. There was no coach to ask for guidance. So therefore, I decided then that when I leave my corporate tenure, I would be a coach to people to take them to their next transition of their career. What I expect, only specific highlights. We will touch upon what are the transition challenges, common transition challenges, and choosing the career options. So how do we do that? The application tracking software called the ATS, compliant CV and resume. Why is this so important? The reason, the logic, and the truth behind that. And the power of networking. This is going to be your lifeline when you go into this career. We found how power of networking also helps while in the armed forces, but out here, the power of networking and what is the platform that is obviously the LinkedIn. How do you make use of that to sharpen your career, to ensure your growth, and to get better opportunities as you keep rolling down the second career? Winning at interviews, obviously, unless you win the interview, you don't get your job. So therefore, what does it take to win an interview? What are those nuances? It's not like any other interview. So what are those aspects? I will try and cover this as much as I can. However, more of it when you approach me as a coach or as a mentor. Then how can I help as a coach and mentor? That is how we address all of the above. Okay. And why is this a niche area that I have chosen? So transition challenges, the fear of unknown, the job insecurity is what encounters as one of the first thoughts when you decide to move on. Could be because of any reasons that may be, but the fear of will I get a job? That is something which is actually there in the back of your mind, or that is perhaps preventing you from making the transition or wondering how do I go about doing the transition. When we got the job as in the armed forces, we never went through this as much as it is now when you're leaving after 10, 14, or 20 years, or even after superannuating. The second is collating information. We generally get our opinions from our course mates, our friends, our people who have been in the industry, our family. They're all well-meaning and their opinions. And because they're opinions, it belongs to them. Whereas you would not be responding to that or experiencing that opinion which they have shared. So you are a personality by yourself. Therefore, it's always better to ask pointed questions. For instance, don't ask them, how is this career in cybersecurity? Ask them, what are the challenges you faced when you took on this career? And what was the scaling, upskilling that you did? How does it help? These are pointed questions that you need to ask, for instance. Just give an example. Then we come from a very protected environment and we are going to an environment of freedom. And some of us are really having an issue handling it. Let me elaborate this a little bit. In the armed forces, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, anything, there is always a senior to fall back on. As a commanding officer, you are a brigade commander, or the brigade commander had a div commander, like that. In the Army, it's like that. And similarly, it's the case with all of the armed forces. There is always someone. While we may have to face adversity, maybe we are giving up our life for the cause of the nation, but that is based on a very high level of training and the equipment and the equipping ourselves in a mental mindset. So that is something that we are able to handle. The moment we come to the corporate outside, when I say corporate, I mean it could be a PSU, it could be entrepreneurship, anything. I'm just using the word corporate to as a collective now. So when you are out there, you're on your own. You have to take decisions and live by the decisions. Yes, you all also have a boss, but the boss is expecting you to live up to the decision making. He might at best or she might at best support you, but thereafter you are the one who is going to be answerable, accountable for the decision that you have taken. And if it goes wrong against the interests of the organization or the people, obviously you will have to move on. So from that point of view, that is definitely a challenge which you need to handle. Transitioning from an instruct to collaborate. In the armed forces, we always gave instructions or we took instructions. That was the way, and it was required. That's the way of life there. But here, out in this environment, it is more of collaborate. You've got to collaborate to get your things done. There is no, it's my way or a highway. It doesn't work anymore here, right? So you will never get the kind of the upskilling that you need to do with your certifications. That is just one portion of it. More of how are you going to deal with people to get them to collaborate with you. It could be your juniors, it could be even a fresher. How do you get them to collaborate? You can't be giving instructions all the time. It will not work. You will actually create an invisible ball. This is another challenge that you have to be conscious of and work towards it, right? And let me tell you this, I've seen officers in the armed forces highly successful in the corporate and miserable failures. Some of the miserable failures are because they've started commanding their departments or the organizations that they have moved into. You can't template the armed forces into a corporate. It doesn't work. It will not work. It only gives you a comfort level for you to, I've been doing that, I've done that there. That doesn't work. And you're actually, the moment you say that, you are creating a wall. I'm spending some time on this one because this is something that you have to be conscious of and be careful of. The seniority baggage, obviously, we all know it. The sooner you shed it while you're in the armed forces, it is better. Which is why in the DGR course, it will be always good if you all collectively call yourself each other by first name. The respect of the rank does not go away by calling people in the first name. It applies even there. In fact, when you go out, you will find a lot of people addressing you by your rank more than your name. Okay, so keep that in mind when you go out. Elements of transition process. I will take one by one, each of the most important ones. The first one is your CV designing. This is your first, what can we call it? Let's say call your passport, or it could be a visiting card. Your CV is the one that people are going to take. Fortunately, unfortunately, it has got digitalized. The application tracking software takes a look at your CV before a human element even comes there. We'll talk about it more as we go in the presentation. Then comes the LinkedIn optimization. This is your lifeline in the second career. The stronger you believe and stronger you make sure that this LinkedIn optimization works, I have a special session designed for this in the career transition because it is that important and that powerful. Interview techniques. Now, we've been through interview. That's why we got a number of interviews. That's why we got the armed forces. But that's not the same interview that is going to happen. There may be similarities, but the way that you're going to project your 10 and 14 or 20 or 34 years is a different game altogether. So I touch specifically on this. I do mock interviews. And I'm very proud to say that in the transitioning, the number of officers as on date, the ones that went through me for the interviews has been 100% hit rate, right? We just concentrated on how to address what are the likely questions, because I've been in 4 different industries and been conducting so many interviews, right from the C-suite, that is the chief suite, CTO, CFO, the chief finance officer, the chief technical officer, that C-suite, to the intern or a fresher. So I touch upon those aspects here. So what you have to look out for, how do you create a winning interview? And then comes the environmental orientation. This is very important. I touched some of it aspect when I was talking about protective environment and the freedom. What is it that takes for you to be successful outside? What are the things that you should vary yourself when it comes to the mistakes that you're probably likely to do because of having been in an organization for 10, 14, 20, 34 years? So we have a heads up on this, a session on this one. I can only tell you what is the road ahead and how do you handle it. The rest, obviously, it is your call on how you handle it, how you take it. You have the instruction manual, you have those what to do and what not to do. How do you read the writing on the wall? I can only tell you that. Thereafter, how do you play your cards is entirely your call. Now, how to choose the career options. Firstly, when you make your choice for a career option, that's your first step. And this is where the maximum confusion is. You can narrow this down if you are very clear about whether this career option is a want or is it because you're happy to do that career. Why I'm differentiating between a want and a happiness is purely because in the want, it is compelled by reasons beyond your control. You may need, let's say, especially if you're on 10 or 14 years, you have a career to carry on, you have a family to support. So that is the reason. So that's more of a want. And combined with that is a large amount of happiness too. Whereas as you move up, when you are leaving superannuating or when you're in the higher experience bracket, you would like to do what you're fond of doing because you have over a period of time developed something that you're having a lot of strength in executing that as a career option. One of the reasons why I'm emphasizing on happiness as one of the major reasons for you to choose your career is because when you are happy doing what you are doing, there is a passion that comes with it. There is a higher level of productivity, and there is very, very less stress compared to just choosing a career because somebody told you to choose that career, because there was a higher CTC there. The greed for a higher CTC, I'm putting it as greed because some of these CTCs that you will get in the corporate are far more than what you actually require. So you want to aspire for that, not realizing that will that be, because there are people who have got into 40, 50 lakhs bracket, and after 6 months, or maybe even less than 2 or 3 years, they have gone down, they moved out because they couldn't stand, their attitudes didn't change, and therefore they suffered because they clearly realized that that was a wrong career choice. And thus they had to move out, and they had to go in for a lesser CTC than what they started with. And this is a case even with some graduates and interns too, or even freshers. Okay. Then comes the factors for considerations. What are your financial state when you leave? What are your liabilities? What are your, make your own balance sheet of what's the pluses and minuses that you have, and how are you going to handle that? What is the minimum expense that you can do? When you calculate that, make sure that you're realistic. Don't exaggerate it just because you're going to get a higher salary when you go out, right? So have a very realistic amount, and that is amount into 12 is the CTC that you will not allow any job to go below 2. That is a CTC which is your cutoff line, and let this be in your mind. Please don't discuss it with anyone, and that is your ace up your sleeve. Below the CTC, you will not accept any job. That is goes for that. And compensation, I do have a special session on compensation, how to do that, how to negotiate, what are the aspects of it, what are the hidden compensation, what comes to your hand, what goes into your expenses, what goes into the company's expenses, all that gets covered there. Then comes the transition runway. The transition runway is from the time that you leave your career in the armed forces till the time that you get your job. How much of that can you sustain? That is a figure that you need to calculate depending on what is the additional courses that you need to do, how to upscale and all of that, which comes before you actually pick up a job. What is that sustainable transition runway? That's what it talks about. Upskilling and certifications, we've seen people do a lot of upskilling certain because somebody told them to do. And if I look at that CV of that particular officer, I can clearly say he is all over the place. There is no focus. And that works against you. You have to be very, very careful about what you want to choose. And having chosen that, your upskilling and certification has to go along with that. You have to be the best there, right? Just choosing operations certification, also doing a HR because you want to, if I get a HR job, then I can do that also, and also do supply chain management. If I get a job there, then I can do this, or I can also say those things don't work. It clearly shows that you're a mixed bag. Then comes the family factors. What is the location that you want to settle down to? You have a family now. Instability while in the armed forces because of frequent transits is one of the major reasons why we choose a second career. So factors like that, your parents, aged parents, choice of where do you want to stay, a lot of other factors come there. Then list out the options that is available to you. Is it operations? Is it supply chain management, HR, administration, security? These are all typical ones which normally everybody go to. And now comes cybersecurity. Very niche, very, very useful career to follow because there's a huge demand out here, a huge demand. I did a webinar with ISAC, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. So they are a renowned NGO of cyberspace within India. And they have a whole lot of courses, and you really don't have to be tech savvy to do a cyber. You don't have to know, do a BCA or an MCA to be a cybersecurity specialist. All you need is a thirst for doing well, learning, and upskilling yourself. And second is that investigative mind. You already have it by virtue of being in the armed forces. Entrepreneurship, if you are there, that is something that you are fond of. It comes naturally to some people. So what does it take? 90% plus startups are also failing. So therefore, this needs a lot of preparation. There are incubation centers in various states, capitals, who help you become a polished entrepreneur. Then comes consultancy. This is another area. If you're very good at something, like I've chosen consultancy, management consultancy, because I was in 4 different industries. So I chose that. And then an NGO, if you're fond of, you're not too fond of what is the compensation, but there is a passion behind empowerment. You want to be with the education. You want to uplift the rural, the children from there. So you want to go an NGO which does that. And some of the NGOs are very professional. Then the social sector again, then, and finally, of course, UN, and not just finally, UN is also another good option. So there are people who pick up UN, and UN pays you very handsomely. And although it's lost its teeth, but it's not lost its job opportunities. Choosing your upskilling and certifications comes with a purpose. More of it when we discuss with each other as to what is the career choice that you have. And don't spread yourself thin. Be very, very focused as to what you should be doing, right? And there are so many other aspects of upskilling certifications, which I tell the officers who reach out to me, right? So I will handle that separately. Identify a coach and mentor for better clarity and bouncing off your thoughts. Coaching is something which is still nascent in India, but it's very well in most of the Western countries, because they've realized that to be a successful professional, you need a coach. The best of the teams in the world, irrespective of any sport you want, or the best of the topmost executives, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, anybody that you choose, all of them have got coaches. It's not because they lack something, it is because they want somebody to bounce off their ideas. There are people that we have very close to us. We have our spouse, we have our parents, we have our friends, we have postmates and everybody. But when you talk to them, there is a very strong possibility that when they give you an answer to whatever questions that you have, it gets colored with the relationship that you have. Whereas a coach or a mentor is totally independent. The ethics of coach does not allow judgments to come when they coach you. They will only give you a guide. I will only give you a guide. You choose. I will give you the wherewithal to make your choices. But you will choose what you have to choose, and therefore you have accountability for what your options are. And secondly, there is commitment because it was your decision. I can easily give a decision based just taking one look at whatever you have done, but that's not what a coach is meant for, right? So I thought I'll spend some time on this, and that's a niche area that I'm going into, coaching and being a mentor. You will have a lot of people there who can help you coach. You're most welcome to choose anyone. But I have made coaching for career transition as a career because of the experience that I've got, and because of the connections that I have made in all these past 8 years. I am a premium subscriber of LinkedIn. The reason is because I realized this 8 years back how important it is, and I have connected. So if there is any choice that you need to reach out to somebody for opinions, I reach out to my connections and help you connect. I've done that for officers who are going niche as per their choice of options are concerned. So that is something that is which I thought I must say, and that is what makes me special. Now, this is a question which most of you ask, which MBA, and firstly, why MBA? Let's answer that first. The MBA is giving you a sort of a binocular to what is expected outside where you had no access earlier. You were so immersed in your armed forces career that there was no need for you, except for a few general knowledge or some access that you want to do, in your investment or just reading a newspaper and things like that. But when you're picking up as a carrier, you have to have that wherewithal. You should have the skills required for that carrier. You should be able to enhance your experience of armed forces as a leader, as a person who has excelled in dealing with uncertainty. How do you exploit that skill set into a knowledge from the corporate, the business outside? How do you convert that into a business language? How do you understand the lingo that they speak? For all of that, you need an MBA. Okay, if you're a serious second career, if you just want to go and work, perhaps you might get somebody without doing an MBA, without even doing any of the courses. Somebody might, whom you got a connection, might ask you to join them, and that's considered very extremely lucky. But if you're looking for not taking any chances, then MBA is a must. Now comes the question, which MBA? Before we go that, this is another area which a lot of people ask: is it okay if I just do the DGR certification course, or should I do an MBA? Which is better? Now let's understand where this is coming from. The DGR course is a certificate course. They give you a certificate, and it is giving you an environmental exposure of what you can expect when you go to the corporate. And if you're serious enough to believe in that and then make use of the lessons that they're giving you, definitely a DGR course gives you that break. Now, why is that pitted against an MBA? Now, this comes from my experience and for another reason, which you got to be aware right now. When you do an MBA, it qualifies you, and especially if you do an MBA from a premier institute. Just doing an MBA from anywhere else doesn't really matter. Okay, you have to do it from premier institute. Go to the NIRF, National Institutional Rating Forum 2022, and it'll tell you what are the top institutes which is recognized by the government for an MBA. Pick up those top 20 of the institutes at best that you can to do your various courses and things like that, right? Some of the institutes don't consider themselves to be rated by them, so you will not find ISB there, for instance. Like that, there are other institutes too. But this is a very good yardstick for you to pick up and to do your MBA. Now, this MBA is important when you go to very high levels of your industry of the company. Especially in C-suite, they expect you to be an MBA most of the time. In all cases, they expect you to be MBA with MBA which comes from a premier institute. You go take any of the CEOs or the CTOs or any of them and look at the profile, look at the job description, and you will know what I mean, right? There may be companies who would just purely take you because of the experience that you've got, but you still haven't gone there. You still haven't got the corporate experience. So therefore, that is not even a choice for you. So you still need to do an MBA to make yourself available for the corporate. So that is one. I suffered this because I got an opportunity after about 8 years after I left the armed forces, and I couldn't pick up that purely because the policy of the company said they wanted an MBA from a premier institute. So I lost out on a very good salary. Okay. Now comes the question, which MBA? A regular MBA? Is it an online MBA or is it an executive MBA? A regular MBA is the PMP course which we talk about, where you need to access the course regular. You go to the institute, and this is flagship for most of the institutes, the management institutes, because you get more number of students here. You need to appear through GMAT and CAT and many exams. Some of the institutes have their own exams. You got to clear that, and only then you are allowed to do that course. And it's very intensively competitive. And a lot of 10 years and 14 years are attempting to do this route. Okay. I will give you a take here regarding this. Let me just go and explain this a little bit on the others MBA too. The online MBA is where you do it online, perhaps weekends or during weekdays, during the evening hours. You do this online. It's for 2 years. It is much less those who can't afford going to a regular MBA, and because they need to work, so they do the online MBA, right? And then comes the executive MBA. The executive MBA is people who have already seasoned, who have got experience, 10 years, 15 years. Some very categorically say that they want people of 15 years. Now, this is an MBA that is, you don't have those written exams or anything to access. The major routes that they take is you need to appear for an interview to convince them as to why you want to do an executive MBA. And the second is that sometimes they may ask you to write an essay or a statement of purpose to see what is the take. Why do you want to really do an MBA? Now, today, the trend is this executive MBA. The reason is that because of the pandemic, a lot of people upscaled, and it also gave companies opportunity to get their middle and perhaps senior management to be in touch with the latest trends of management techniques, tools, and everything. And that is only through executive. They have no time to prepare for a CAT exam or a GMAT exam to do this MBA. Some of the GETs and the GMTs, that is graduate engineer trainees or management trainees, when they come, after about 7-8 years, they've been functional leaders. Now they want these leaders to move into senior leadership role where it is more of strategic leadership. So therefore, the MBA comes into play because you are dealing with people from across industries of about 15, and you're creating a network for your future opportunities, future growth, and for the brand that you have to create for yourself. So executive MBA takes prime, especially for the armed forces officers who are moving out. If you're a graduate or a postgraduate, regular MBA is fine. The reason now I'll come to regular MBA, why my take is different is because in the regular MBA, okay, now this is a fact. I'm not giving an opinion. This is a fact. The regular MBA, when they go and do the average there is of students who are undergraduates or at best postgraduates, and at best maybe somebody who's done about 2 or 3 years and wrote the exams, who worked for 2 or 3 years and wrote the exams and gotten there. That's a regular MBA. The pitch there is no experience for 10, 15 years or 20 years that you have put. Where you should be interacting at a senior leadership level, that is where you're going to go in. Do you want to be pitched with those guys? The case studies that you discuss when you're in executive MBA, and the level of discussion and the interactions that you have is not comparable to what you're doing in a regular MBA. That level is different. That is start-off point. That's the start-off for most of you. The only thing the regular MBA has an advantage over the other two, and it is not really an advantage. It is a perceived advantage. And that is you will definitely get a job when you do a regular MBA. Because the placement committees of all these institutes, they only focus on regular MBA. But that does not say that the online MBA or the executive MBAs have never got a job. It does not say that. You're getting a job, and why are these placement committees not concentrating on online or executive MBA? Because you come from various levels of services, you come various levels of experience, so therefore your compensation also varies. So for example, somebody from 15 years of experience who are all there doing that particular executive MBA may start from 30 to 40 lakhs per annum to even 80 or 90 lakhs or maybe a crore, but they're still doing the MBA. So therefore, there is no benchmark for people to say that you will get a next job or you'll get a next. But when these people qualify and go back, some of them are sponsored by the company, some of them they do it on their own. They definitely get a better pitch as far as compensation is concerned because they qualified themselves for this MBA. So more of it when we do what is good for you, when we discuss it, when as a coach or a mentor, when you approach me for it. And there would be definitely a very different opinion than what I'm talking of. But we need to address each of that according to what your need is, what your capability is, at what level are you leaving, right? So with that, let's go to the importance and nuances of ATS-based CV. Let me give you an example of what happens and why is this ATS such a the go-to stuff as far as recruitment is concerned. Let's take a recruitment manager or a talent acquisition manager in a company. He or she would be dealing with about 10 profiles within the company. So they have to hire 10 different profiles. So they go out and spread the word around through the portals and LinkedIn and everything else, and the CVs and everything starts pouring in, including the websites of the company. For minimum for each of this, at least if you take about, say, 300, I'm talking very minimum. There are sometimes it goes in thousands, 10,000s, even some of these CVs that come in, especially the lower ones. Let's say at least 300, and you have 10, and you have 3,000 CVs. Now, within 1 week, you have to go through 3,000 CVs. Do you think it's humanly possible? Obviously not. That is the reason why the application tracking software, the ATS, is so important, because this is a cold-blooded software that will filter the CVs that is coming to what the job description requires. It goes for a match, and the match is set by the officer or the talent acquisition manager on the system so that it will filter out the CV. So even if your CV is 84.5% match and he has set 85% match as a requirement from the job description, your CV gets rejected. You may be far superior than the one who has made the CV according to the job description. But you lost out because you didn't get called for the interview. And even after this gets selected, let's say out of this 3,000, he selects about 10 or 15, and he's calling you for the interview. He goes through the first page, first half, before deciding whether you. So 9 to 14 seconds, a researched figure of people spending that much time. I, as a head of HR, spent only that time. I don't even go to the third or the fourth page. I go to the first page. If I find what I'm looking for in the first page, it's only then I bother to go look at the second page. That's the truth there. Okay, don't challenge it, don't question it. That's what happens. Okay, so therefore, how are you going to manipulate the system to make sure that your CV gets placed for being called for an interview is what this, you got to beat this application tracking system software. And I'll tell you how to go about doing that. 98% facts for you. 98% Fortune 500 companies use ATS. There are almost 15 types or 15 brands of application tracking software. We do not know which company uses what. And we also do not know which vintage it is. The earlier ones find it difficult to track some of the aspects within your CV. So some of the aspects that get missed out, obviously the latest ones will perhaps pick it out, but the earlier ones will not pick it up, so you won't know. So the best bet is to go in for a text CV, and I'll come to that CVs after some time, and I'll tell you why it is important. 66% of large companies, 35% of small and medium enterprises use ATS, and you do not know which company that you're applying for, are they using ATS or not? You have no idea. So therefore, you have to have your CV or the resume compatible with an ATS. Okay. So going forward from there, some of the nuances, just some of them. Okay. The more of it when I deal with you on your CV, when I'm going through your CV, preparing it for you with my panel of consultants, I will get you through what are the other nuances that you need to take off. The most important ones are your CV is your individual stamp of your professional personality. You cannot cut paste from your course mate's CV who's already been in the industry and create one for yourself. It does not speak you. A seasoned interview panelist will see through that CV in 10 minutes flat. 10 minutes flat. A seasoned guy. So don't do that cut and paste. You're wasting your time. The second is that the ATS has, obviously it's a software, it's got an algorithm, and it looks for specific keywords from the job description which is given out. So which is why for every job that you apply, you have to keep changing the contents of your CV to make sure at least 70 to 85% match is there. You also have no idea what is the percentage of match those people who are filtering that ATS. But it is better to be safe to have at least an 85% match. And how do you do that? I will deal with you when we do that. The CV specific designing. For instance, a simple thing like a job title. You might put in your CV that security specialist, just giving an example. But if the job description says they're looking for general manager security, and you didn't change your CV to write general manager security, the ATS ignores your CV. It is that important. So these are the nuances that I wanted to mention to you. Another one is that metrics, facts, figures, everything that talks of in the bullet points of your tenures or of your functional portion of it will have to have metrics and facts when you took over and when you left in that particular tenure. Put facts, figures. The armed forces, what you do in the armed forces, unfortunately, people outside who are hiring you for a different business system itself do not understand it. They don't even realize the difference between the rank structure itself. So therefore, unless you quantify it, give out the magnitude of what you've done in the armed forces, they will not be able to understand. I'll give you examples of how we go in the next slide. Avoid tables, columns, graphs, pie charts, images. The reason is because of what I told you in the last slide. You do not know the vintage. The latest ATS systems or the updated versions may be in a positions, maybe, but you have no idea. So do you want to give it to the chance? Do you want to leave it to chance? A simple thing like some of the earlier ones cannot read content which is in the header and footer. Some of the latest ATS perhaps can do that. But do you know which is it? So why are you taking chances? So why don't you create one which takes care of all these aspects? Okay. Images, it cannot. It has to read a Word or a PDF file. It cannot read any other format. This is just a tip for you. Reverse chronology for education qualifications, certification, experience. From the latest, go backwards. Okay, not from backwards from the earliest to the latest. It is from latest to the earliest. Titling, I already touched this to you, professional experience, if that is what you have written and it's required. And if you write my expertise in general, it doesn't help. No scanned document or a scanned image. I touched this point earlier. Some of these hygiene points of what font are you supposed to use. There are certain set of fonts which is read most comfortably by the ATS. So more of it when we handle the ATS, I have no time to go through all of those details. What is the margin? What is how do you word that out and all of that? So all you need to do is make sure that you beat the ATS by making sure that you get a job description. So somebody tells you, hey, just put up your application to me. I will speak to the management and see if we can get an opportunity for you. Please ask that person to share the job description, because you have to match your ATS, your CV with that job description through the compatibility of the ATS. And if you don't do that, what happens is that person is going to share it with the HR guy, and the HR guy will put yours among the rest of the CVs, and yours will get lost. So therefore, let's not take those risks. Okay. Now, transposing the armed forces experience to corporate lingo. This is to describe the examples that I was just telling you. So let me just take you with some of the examples that I was talking about. Describe the magnitude of what you did. I told that earlier too, and I'm just repeating that. For instance, let's take this example. Normally, I find this in the CV when it comes for the first time. Move the unit in my tenure from peace to operational area in given time and deployed successfully in an operational role. You and me, if I'm from the armed forces, I understand what you're saying, okay, to some extent. But a guy who has no idea of what the armed forces is and was wanting to hire you will have no clue what are you talking about. If you put it this way, carried out operational movement of approximately 1,500 men, 150 vehicles, and 900 tons of warlike stores, and safely across 1,500 kilometers using road, rail, and air transport with precision logistic management resources. That guy says, wow, look at what this guy has done. And if his company is looking at a volume of this extent, he is surely going to go for you. But with the first sentence, what is written here, he won't know. He wouldn't consider you. Let's take another example. Cost saving. Cost saving is something they all look at. So if you say was instrumental in saving cost and inventory management, nothing. Nice, beautiful words. That's it. Whereas if you say pivotal in reducing inventory management costs by 22% by optimizing stock turnover, it tells that person that you know what inventory management is, you are measuring it, and you know what stock turnover and how do you optimize it. It speaks volumes about your capability of what you did in the armed forces and how you can relate that in the corporate when he's looking at you to say manage a warehouse, for instance. Okay. Now, some of us have got commendations and we write Army Chief's commendation card for meritorious service. That's all we mention. We don't mention anything beyond that. Now, they don't know who is an Army Chief or what level is he and what is this commendation award and what is this meritorious service. Unless you say successfully attempting multiple infrastructure challenges to achieve project objective within a deadline in January or whatever that, whatever you want to say. Okay, if you can give, because when you've given your citation for this commendation, you definitely had facts there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got it. So therefore, get some of those elements out here, right? And when you're writing your certifications, write what course it is. Like say, for instance, if it is PMP and which institute you did it from, say PMI from USA, and which month and year you did it. This is a sequence that you need to follow in your CVs whenever you write on your on your academic qualifications as well as your certification. And again, from latest to go towards the earliest one. I want to tell you very quickly about this types of CVs. So you have a chronology CV, which is of course reverse. It talks about right from the current to your maybe 20 years, 10 years, 14 years, that whatever you did. And you're talking about each tenure about not more than 3 to 5 bullet points of the achievements that you did there with metrics. That is chronological one. Functional one is for the people who are a little more senior, which have done a lot of things. So they will put on some of the highlights of the last 10 or 15 years, what they did as achievements, and that will be listed out in the first. And then as tenure or tax timelines or earlier career or something, because nobody is interested what you did 10 years before as a lieutenant or as a captain or a sub-lieutenant or a flight it's not even required for them. They want to know currently what you did, because that is a skill set that you're going to transfer there. And then there is a possibility if you can do a combination of both, where you give a combination. First, you give some of the highlights of what your skill sets are, what your profile highlights are, and then you talk about the various posts. You can choose any of this depending on what is comfortable for you. There is nothing like this is the better one or the right one. Then comes the format of CVs, the text CV. I was emphasizing on this. This is non-controversial. Almost all ATS can pick this up because it is pure text. Everybody knows what the system knows what it is required for. Then comes the next one, which is visual or a two-dimensional CV. Now, this, I will show you examples of this to give you what this is. This is a little more, they put the, they put some kind of pictures there to express what their qualifications are, from which institute. Instead of writing the institute, they put the logo of the institutes there. So this is a two-dimensional one, and three ones is based on infographics. I'll show you an example of all the three. Let's take a first look at the resume. Pretty straight. It talks about your core area of expertise. You will not be able to read this because I just wanted you to get a feel of overall how it looks like. That's why I've just narrowed it down to the layout. So it talks about personal information. So the person wants to go in the first half of the CV itself. From here, he will get to know. From here itself, he will get to know what is the requirement from this portion itself. And then he will then look at your career graph, and then achievements he can read if he is convinced what you are here. And some of this, if he wants to take a look at it, he'll be able to see. So the first half of the first page itself, he is clear about what you've done. He doesn't really have to go to the second page. Now, this is, we're talking about the text CV. Now, let's talk about the next CV. We're talking about the next one, and this is a two-dimensional visual one. So this, he has put these fonts talking about he's good at networking and he's good at cybersecurity. He's put these kind of logos here. So this will not get read by the CV. It can only read text. Okay. So therefore, it's not of much. He's given out what are the awards that he won in the various years here. And he will not be able to pick it. That will not be able to pick it up. And then this is the infographic one. Looks very, very attractive. And it given graphs like this, but it doesn't tell what this graph means. And it gives you the timelines. The ATS, if it is good enough and if it is recent ones, it will probably pick up these words that's written here. Otherwise, it will not. It will skip it. And therefore, you lose out just because you made it looking very attractive, but it doesn't really talk much, right? Now, the RAM, MS Office is just giving you some scales, but it's not telling you what exactly it is measuring you for. So this is actually just an eyewash, right? So I'm not a great fan of this. That's the reason I've just mentioned that. And that is more precise because my job is to make sure that you do whatever you do to the best and the probability of winning whatever you have to do happens. That's the reason I'm telling you that. Now, power of networking and LinkedIn. These are facts. Forbes has done a research and they say that 80% of jobs are not advertised. They are by means of referral. People refer for jobs to say, do you know somebody? We have an opening here. It doesn't get advertised. 65% of recruiters in India use job referrals as a sourcing for jobs. I've seen that because I'm from the HR, so I have a lot of HR networks. So if there is a requirement of any particular job, they put it in this network better because if they have to advertise in a newspaper or somebody somewhere else, they need to pay for it. It is a cost. Whereas this is much better because then I put it in my network and then it goes into geometric progression of networking, and a lot of people get referred through that. So that's why this is very important. And of course, power of LinkedIn. You can use LinkedIn. In fact, if you have no connections at all, this is the only hope for you to get going in the corporate, to get the kind of opportunities that you want, to network, to create the brand. You have to create a brand which has to be visible by the time you leave the armed forces. So you need to start working backwards, 1 year, 2 year earlier. Some of the officers who have connected with me on coaching and mentoring are already 4 years ahead. So it is that important. And your LinkedIn, because of virtue of the policy which says that you cannot be a member of LinkedIn or social networking except from the last 1 year, you got to take permission. All of that is understood. Even that 1 year is good enough for you to network. How do you do this LinkedIn network? It is feature by itself. If there are somebody who is telling you there are some consultants who will tell you that we can brighten up your LinkedIn. All that they can do is to load that information on the LinkedIn from your CV or some information that you give and maybe some cosmetic changes here, there. But LinkedIn is a very personal, powerful tool. more of it, as I explained to you, you have to create that LinkedIn profile yourself. It is your mind which will tell you what are the kind of people that you have to connect with. It is your language of how you put to connect with those people. How do you invite people? How do you attract people to respond to you? It is your language. So these are features that I will be talking about. What is the recommendations? How do you seek recommendations? How do you give recommendations? So what are endorsements? And how do you use LinkedIn for going into the companies that you're looking at in the future? How do you look at what is the growth in the company there? What are the salaries the companies are offering? All of that is possible in LinkedIn. So it's a very powerful tool, but you need to do. So I do a one-on-one sessions with people to LinkedIn because it is that important. Winning at interviews, coming to this very important one, is matching of perception. Now, I want you to understand this very carefully. This is the secret behind the interviews. So let's say that there is a candidate and then there is an interviewer, okay? Or interviewer, and I say it's a panel of interviews. Now, between you two, there is a perception of what is the job expectation which the interviewer or the interview panel has. Now, there is also a perception of you as to what can you deliver for that job description that they've given you. So these are two perceptions. Now, there are about 10 or 15 people who are being interviewed for a selection of one out of these 10 or 15. Now, the perceptions of both of you, which matches the most, it is that person who takes the job. This is the essence of, and this is my take. This, you will find this in my book, and how to sharpen your interview skills, and a lot of other information there. So this is what I was talking about, and this is a secret of actually getting through the interviews, right? And now there are something else. There are kinds of questions that they can ask you. Predominantly, it's a technical question if you happen to come with a technical background, or behavioral question. Behavior, it is not even or, it is always a behavioral question. What is a behavioral question? A behavioral question is a question that gives you a situation, and they will ask you, okay, tell me about a time when you faced a challenge of establishing a new project while you were in the armed forces. That they're asking you, that is a behavioral. They want to know how did you approach the challenge? How did you manage it? What was your technique of doing it? What was something special that you did it? And what was the result? That's what they're looking at. But if you have no idea how to handle this question, you would probably not be answering what they're looking for. You know that perception? You will not meet that perception. So therefore, I use this technique called doer. This is my intellectual property. I've designed this. There's something even called a star technique, but it's almost more similar. But this is my technique of getting good. It's very easy because it's a doer, right? It's very easy. The first is describe. So I will take an example and take you through this doer technique. Let's say that the question to you was, tell us about a time, how did you save money while you were in the armed forces? So you say that yes, there was a warehouse, or there are stores that you were having, and you being in charge of the supply chain, you decided that you should cut down the electricity, because when you enter the stores, because the way that it is designed, the style, the less windows and all of that, there is no natural light. So you have to put on the lights within the thing, and it is consuming a lot of electricity during the day. So that is the situation that you wanted to do something about. That's your description. So what is the objective? To cut down the electricity bills monthly by reducing the bulbs, the quality of the bulbs, and all of that. And how did you go about doing it? That comes in the execution portion. So you say that, okay, so what I did was, it was asbestos styled stores that we had. So a portion of it, I got that removed and put a perspex one, the glass one, so that natural light comes into the room and we don't have to use any of the artificial lights on. And secondly, I changed all the bulbs to LED ones. From a tube light, we moved into an LED one. So you saved money from that point of view. And what was the result? You reduce electricity bills by 5% or 10%. So like this, for every job description which they're asking you to be a skill set on, think about 2 or 3 situations in the armed forces that you've done, and answer that with this mnemonic DOER. So this is something that I feel that you must practice and rehearse before you go for an interview, because you're likely to get asked for this on this aspect. Now comes, why am I getting rejected in interviews? Most of us in the armed forces, by virtue of the job that we do and things that we are very good at articulating ourselves, irrespective of the levels of the language that we have, whether it's English or the mother tongue or anything like that. We are very good at articulating. We can convey our point across. So you would have attended that interview, answered all the questions that they've asked, but you're still wondering why you didn't get selected. Because of this reason. Maybe you were talking about what you were good at. You did not say what they wanted to hear. Remember the perception that I showed you? There is a perception of what they're expecting, that job profile, when you come and give your answers. Your answers is not fitting that. So how do you get to fit that is when you use those techniques, and there are so many other inputs that you can get used to find out what are they looking for in that job role, and how do you address those questions. So that is something that I do in the interview techniques that I handle in the job mock interviews that I do. We will estimate what are the probable questions, because you cannot be 100%, you can't estimate what they can ask you anything under the sun. But generally, most of it, how do we estimate what kind of questions can come, and how do we prepare the answers for that? And that is something that I do that in the interview sessions that I, as part of my coaching and mentoring. Then you must invest in a second career. See, by nature, we all want to, save money. If I can save 50 rupees somewhere, I'm fine. So I go in for cheaper options. Take that mindset off straight away. If you find that there is a seminar which can add value to the knowledge that you can gain, let's say if you're going, there is a cybersecurity national seminar and you got to pay, say, 7,000 rupees for it to attend that. Or you want to hire a coach, you want to hire a mentor, or you want to attend a webinar which is cost, which there is a cost, because they are using an expertise person and they're using a paid version, licensed version of webinars. So there will be a cost. If they're using that, please, for heaven's sake, pay and do it. You will get back this amount in your first year or the maximum second year for whatever you invested on your second career. So please don't be a miser there, and don't think in terms of scrounging for discounts and things like that. Knowledge of Excel, get a tutor. Excel is something which is important. A lot of people in the corporate say that we have to go software, let's get rid of Excel, but we still haven't been there. Maybe some companies have gotten to that, but still a lot of companies are still depending on Excel to do, and you have to be an expert. In the armed forces, we had some babus to do it for us, but there you have to do it yourself. You have to be analytical. You can't go to a meeting saying that my gut tells me that this is the way. In the armed forces, we did it that way, so therefore that's the right way. You can't say that. You have to support it with facts. And if you have to support it with facts, you have to crunch those facts. And crunching of that facts come with a pivot table. It comes with conditioning formatting. It comes with dashboarding. And all of that are Excel skills. You can go and do this online if you have the patience, and most of us maybe can get and do that, and you might get a certificate and that's it. But have you practiced? Whereas a tutor will go by what your level is and take you to the next level. So I have already got a Microsoft, ex-Microsoft tutor who does it, and he goes exactly what is required in the corporate, which portion of Excel can you use, and he chooses. There are a lot of officers who have already gone through him, and he goes by your level. Are you at the basic level? Are you at the intermediate? Or are you at the advanced level? And accordingly, he grooms and he gives you assignments. He makes you do the formula. Which are the formulae that is important? He tells you to do that. Then comes this combination of webinars, reading, networking, coach, and everything. You have to get into it. More and more information you get, less and less confused are you. Okay, more information means more power, more knowledge, and more knowledge means more and wiser decision making. I have a transition tigers that I've got a WhatsApp group, and this is the number, that's my number, and a lot of people are there. And I'm not aiming at big numbers, and I don't want people. I want only serious people there, people who want to take their transition seriously, right? That's what I want there, because I share a lot of information what the corporates are looking for, current trends that happen in the corporate. I share it there. You may have 3 or 4 years, but it is indirectly grooming your mind to think the corporate way. So that is my aim there. And plus, any opportunities that I come from various networks, I share it there. And of course, any webinars or anything that comes up, I also share that information there. Do certifications with intent and use that knowledge in new assignment. There was an officer who did these various courses, Lean Sigma, Black Belt, Green Belt, PMP, and everything. And he went, and I created one of my earlier days, I created the CV for him, and then I made it very look impressive, and he got called for the interview. And when he was to go for the interview, or just before that, he, I believe, didn't know what that particular tool that I used there. So I used that particular word because I felt that was, project him. Now what I've done is that every CV that I create, I make sure that I sit with you for an hour to understand what you've done in the armed forces. Then I get it ATS compliant with the consultants that I have. And once it comes back to me, I again sit with you to match, to make sure that you know how to justify the CV. Okay, so that is where it comes from. Because if you cannot translate whatever certificates you've done into the job that you need to work on, then you may be going against what is required. How can I be of help? This is where my coaching expertise and mentoring that I have done for both worlds, I'm going to use this as my third career to help the organization of both the armed forces as well as the corporates in getting the right talent. And the bridges the talent are the transitioning officers, right? And since it's my career, I'm a professional. I spend a lot of money on this. I spent lakhs as being a coach. I have licensed version for the Zoom that I have. So a lot of things I do spend money on. I spend time on connecting with people. I speak to them. So all this is time for me, and there is expense attached to it. So therefore, I will charge people. It is not going to come free for me. There may be others who might do free. You're most welcome to approach them. But with me, there is charge, and I'm doing it with a discount too. For the others outside, I charge a particular figure. For the armed forces, I have a discount, right? But I also charge the GST because I file my returns every quarter. And that's the reason why I put the Prihanji Ventures and there. Right. So what are the sessions that I do? I do an introduction session for 30 minutes. This is free just to understand where you're coming from. And then an advisory on the second carrier. What are the need, the options, its navigation. You might need 2 to 4 sessions depending on the depth of your concerns. Advice on preparing CV and designing CV for ATS compatibility. 2 hours, one before and one after, and of course the consultant fees. This varies depending on how many CVs that you want. Okay. And then the LinkedIn optimization, which takes anything between 1 to 1.5 hours. Preparing for interview will take about an hour. How do you prepare for that? And then mock interviews. Once you get a job description and once you get called for an interview, I can put you through a mock interview and give you feedback to help you crack that interview, and negotiating your compensation. Now, this is another session because you have no idea what the compensation outside is. There are hidden elements sometimes, and there are some things that are applicable to help you or to entice you in the first to take the job. In the subsequent year, you will suddenly find that those things are not being paid to you. So I help you take a look at that. And then the corporate industry orientation prior to joining. Most important one is this, if you really ask me, because I find officers wanting to leave after 6 months or 1 year or even less than that and want to change the job. Now, this is clearly a ask which the officer is lacking. I have no doubts about it. You can give me 10 examples, and all the 10 examples, I will tell you why that officer was not prepared for this transitioning. And that is why I said he or she was not prepared to handle the challenges that came in the second environment that you moved into. And that is the reason you want to move out. Putting up a resignation is very easy. It can be done online in few seconds. But taking on the challenge of what you faced and how do you move through it, that takes time. Because if you are going to resign within 6 months or 1 year, that means all the guys who are in the same caliber in the company should also have resigned. If they have not, then you should be honest enough to ask the reason, why are you resigning? Right? I'm not talking about ethical aspects here. I'm talking about adjustment aspects. Have you adjusted yourself? Right? Are you cabin conscious? Is being denied a cabin a problem for you and that's why you want to resign? Things like that. Okay. Now, this is a book that I'm talking about how to sharpen your interview skills and the mindset. What is the secret that you need to tune in when you just go in for the interview? And perception action, I already told you about it. Tips to have an edge over the others. How do you do that? How do you make yourself visible in the mind of the interviewer? Technique of answering frequently asked questions and not so frequent questions. And how do you answer that? What is the format that you must keep so that you sound confident, right? And you are looking at what is the conversion of your armed forces into the corporate. And I've also put some QR code in the book to capture the checklist on the CV and the interview preparation so that it's there on your mobile. You don't have to carry the book around. Finally, virtual interviews. We've already been through this was because I brought out this book during the pandemic. Even today, a lot of officers have still not upgraded their virtual capability. They bought bikes worth 7, 8 lakhs. They've got SUVs worth 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs, but they have a lousy laptop, even worse mic, and lousiest connection that they have. They have not even put a UPS into their modem so that they go uninterrupted. Just imagine when you're doing an interview and if you get cut off. I mean, you can say sorry any number of times, but then there's already a disturbance that is created. And plus, when you're speaking to people, you should have a seamless connectivity because it is the virtual world going forward. The hybrid working model is already come in place. Okay. And finally, I've got the CEOs and CHROs, chief HR officers across the globe, to give their views as to what are the 3 things that they look for when they interview somebody. And what are the 3 things that put them off when they interview somebody. So I've captured that in this. And this book is interactive in the sense that for the questions, I have given blank spaces, ruled spaces for you to write your portion of this. So it's a very personalized book. And this book can be read in one go. If you have a large glass of beer and maybe 2 cups of coffee, you can finish the book. It's about 112 pages. And every word, every sentence is packed with information, packed with tips, right? How to get hold of this book. You can get hold of this book. It's available on Amazon as a paperback as well as a Kindle version. And this is the, you can take a screenshot of this or you can note this down. This is the link for you to go and access the Amazon. Or even if you just go to Amazon site and type how to sharpen your interview skills, or even if you type my name, Prem Vas, you will get access to this book. And it's just cost of a medium pizza. So it's not even expensive. This is just about 50% of the cost. Now, this is to reach out to me. Please use this. This is a digital card that I've got. Hi, hello. Some of you have already got access to it. Just take a snap of this QR code. And if you don't have a mobile that will capture this, this is my mobile number and this is my email ID. You can always reach out to me in this. On this mobile number, I have the Transition Tigers as a WhatsApp group, right? And once you take a click of this and once I share this, then what you do, if you can click on any of these links that will come up. They're all links with, once you go into my digital card, all of this talks about all that is important to you: coaching, testimonials of what I did, my profile, the power of coaching, are you in dilemma of choosing the right career, crossroads, especially for the armed forces, career transition from you. I've written an article on this. It was there in LinkedIn too. How do you connect with me on LinkedIn? This is the link for that, right? And YouTube, this is my YouTube channel. I put some there. More channels will come up. And if you have to reach out to me for career decisions, this is another link that you can make yourself, right? Thank you so much for spending time with me on this recording that you have. So kindly subscribe to this to get more videos and notifications that will come to you. You can click on the subscribe icon there and do share your comments. I would look forward to it. How did this particular recording help you out? And definitely share it with your colleagues who are transiting and your armed forces groups, because even if somebody who may have somebody in mind who's transiting, even they get benefited by it and they can reach out. We get to connect with each other and perhaps help somebody to transit smoothly. And each individual transition is a success by itself. So there is no competition there. So that is the beauty of this transition. And this is my YouTube channel. You can also take a screenshot of this and you can access this. You go to YouTube and type Leadership with VAS. That is my website also. I have something called Leadership with VAS. Click on this. You can access my website. You can also access me through the website. And some of these courses and the book and everything is also there on the website. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. I hope I didn't take too long a time.